hột gà nướng, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, mất xào đây. Thank you for watching the final episode of season 6, 7 Million Bites, a Vietnam podcast. My guest today is a professional juggler, the first professional juggler we've interviewed on a Vietnam podcast. He has worked for Cirque Du Soleil, producing shows for them, and is now the director of Lune Productions, which produces the À Ố show. If anyone in Saigon or Vietnam or around the world has ever seen it, you can see that at the Saigon Opera House or the Hanoi Opera House. I was lucky enough to see it this year before we got locked down, and it was an unbelievable production. So my guest today is Tuấn Lê. How are you today?
Hello, I am very good. I'm fine and healthy and I'm in a good mood, so everything is good.
That's good to hear. So you're in Hanoi, sorry, I always get it confused. You're in Hoi An at the moment. That's correct, right?
Correct.
So how's life in Hoi An at the moment?
Well, at the moment, compared to the entire countries, we have like a big outbreaks, in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and also in the north. So we are right central of the country, which is still very good under control and still very well protected. There are not so many cases, COVID cases, and we still can move around, And of course, we are lucky to be surrounding like by the nature quite a lot here, so that helps also quite a lot. So I have to say I'm one of the luckier people right now in Vietnam, still to have the ability just to run around the street, and maybe can grab a coffee here and there, and don't have to look back and forwards if anyone will stop you and say, "Hey, you are fine."
You're making me so jealous right now.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, it's like what I can say. I'm a happy and lucky guy.
Well, we had a comedy night last night, and we had people that joined. It was obviously online comedy night, and we had people that joined from like Malaysia. And they were telling us that they were under a lockdown as well. And they're like, we can only go 10 kilometers from our house. And all the guys from Saigon were like, only 10 kilometers? We can't go 10 feet from our house. 10 kilometers sounds like a dream. So it's all about perspective, I guess, right?
Right. I think it's also matter in terms of how people will take it serious, and be aware of the spread out of how crazy it is spread out of this COVID, So as long we are staying isolated, more or less, the better it is, So I mean, like, of course, it's hard for people like in Saigon or in the big city in general, just staying home and cannot go out, or just go for a very need in life, like a grocery store, and even for that they have to, like I watch on the news, they have to stay on the line like for hours, to be able to enter into the grocery store, and I think it's quite a crazy time right now.
Yeah. Crazy doesn't even cut it, does it? It's insane. That last week we did have in Saigon, we had kind of massive panic buying, because all these rumors were going around on Facebook and online, and I guess all the other means of communication. But there was rumors going around that at midnight they were going to stop all food deliveries and bring in an even stricter lockdown, which people then started to think that there was going to be a limitation on food. So there were massive lines at the grocery store, like you said, and we went as well. We were one of the panic buyers. We went and we were like, right, we need to buy food, which actually we needed to go grocery shopping anyway. So it wasn't so much that we were panicking. It was like we needed to go. And we had to line up to get into the mall where the grocery store is. Then we had to go downstairs, line up to get in the grocery store. And the whole thing, I think, from start to finish took us about 2 hours as well as like lining up to pay for the groceries and things like this. But we just went today, and we just were able to go in. We still had to do all the health checks, like fill in the online form and get our temperature taken. But that all went like very quickly, and then we didn't wait for. I've waited longer in line on a normal day, so I think it's okay right now. And there's also been a massive shortage of eggs, so that's been a big thing all over social media. Can you where can I buy eggs? Who's got eggs? But I think that's all gotten a lot better now, because when we went to the store there was loads of eggs, but they did have a limit. The guy in front of us was trying to buy 5 packets of eggs, and he had to put 3 of them back on the shelf. So it's good that they're stopping people like that buy too much.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like after so many years, I have the feeling also like here in general, people are still so afraid of like being hungry, or like don't have enough food. But I mean, like you already explained, like if each of us would buy enough food for a week, for example, then I think this should be okay. But if you take like the entire X what exists in this store, and none of the other would have even like 1 egg. So this is I think it's like I feel I have this feeling like it's kind of a little bit sad, of in terms of how people just can think, and that the country is not in that crazy crisis in terms of getting enough food in the grocery store, in the market, and then just the first one enter the store would buy like as much as they could buy, or even as much money as they could have. They just buy the food. It's like, well, okay. It was quite an interesting moment for me to think again. Like it's like it's not different like than 45, 50 years ago. I mean, after the war, the people are still afraid of not having enough food, but nowadays it's changed, things, right?
But I guess it's an interesting point that obviously not being from here for very long, and obviously not during that time, I hadn't thought about. Do you think that's ingrained then in the psyche here of still lingering thoughts from the war, and even up until the 80s and 90s, there was still kind of massive famines and things like that. Do you think that still lingers in people's minds?
Yes, of course. It's still, and it's the point is not about like they are just making sure that they would have enough. But I don't know what is enough for you. How much is enough. I think nowadays, of course, the food is important, but I think much more important that people need to drink enough clean waters, every day. The water is even more important than the food. I mean, I'm just a little bit crazy myself too, but I think like it's not about what you eat; it's about how you can divide, everything in your life, with your eating habits, with your exercise habits, with your drinking, of course, water, not beer. But yeah, I think this is quite interesting in countries like Vietnam or similar country, So Asia, I think in general, is like, okay, there should be enough food, or even more than enough to take care of the entire family, I would say. Yeah.
I think I need to take your advice, because I've not been the model of health recently. I before the lockdown, I would work out regularly. Since the lockdown started, we thought it was just going to be a couple of weeks, so I got really lazy, and I was like, yeah, no, I'll just have a couple of weeks off. Then it became 3 weeks, then it became 4 weeks. So now I've finally started to do some exercise at home, which I'm going to do some this afternoon, I promise. But it's just quite funny you saying about what you eat and what you consume, because we've just come back from our weekly trip to the grocery store. It's the only time we leave the house. And I just filled the basket with like chocolate and snacks. And I'm like, no, well, if we're staying at home, I want to eat the stuff that I would normally never buy when we go shopping in normal times. But I was like, no, if we're going to be at home all day, I want to eat rubbish.
So you will enjoy it with your Netflix probably.
Well, we haven't been watching too much Netflix, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
And thankfully, I'm still very busy making podcasts, and we're doing some online events, some quiz nights, and comedy shows, and so it's keeping me busy. So we've not been watching too much Netflix. But I also was going to say, you mentioned about, and it's quite funny. People in Vietnam at least have the right idea that when they want to panic buy or they want to buy a lot of things, they buy food because that's sensible, right? Like you want to make sure you have food to eat. Whereas a year and a half ago in the West, what were they panic buying? Toilet paper.
Right, I know. That's crazy.
I never understood it, and I still don't understand why that was the thing that people were going so crazy and filling up their wagons on the wagon. That's an old word, either SUV or whatnot, like with toilet paper. Like I saw one thing that said if you worked it out, they had enough toilet paper for like 40 years. Why would you ever? I don't understand why that was a thing.
I know it's a. I would say something in the direction of a crazy psychic. I think.
Yeah, I think that's more what it was.
Yeah, I have my friends also in US. I remember, like they have the entire basement of their house just with toilet papers. Okay.
It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy. Now, you're not obviously, but you are from Saigon. But I can, for the first time, maybe because we're doing a chat, I can really hear a distinct German accent coming
Oh,
through.
you do?
I
Wow.
do.
Right. Yes. Because I start to study language as I was in Germany, not in Vietnam. So I mean, it's a very dry accent, I say. Sorry.
Well, we met at the German Business Association event that I was performing at, which was hosted by our mutual friend Lum Visai, who's also been on the podcast this season. So that's quite good. Did one performance at the German Business Association and have two amazing guests for the show. And that's where we first got introduced. So tell me a bit about how did you end up in Germany? So tell me, I started off introducing you're a professional juggler. Explain to the audience, how did a boy from Saigon become a professional juggler?
Well, I was born in a family of performing arts in Saigon, and then my grandfather, he was a classical music conductor. My grandma, she was a classical ballerina, and my dad, he was a very well-known musician, trumpet player in Saigon. My mom, she used to be um, a theater director and television producer. She had her own theater company. Yeah, and of course, I grew up in an artistic environment, I would say. So I start to study ballet class when I was 5, and then after this, I went for gymnastics for another year. So I was 6, and then my older brother taught me how to juggle. And as a kid, it was just like a fun thing to do for little kids. It's not something like I would assume that would be um, following me until like for a very long time. So and I started to perform in Saigon, and then we moved to Germany when I was about a teenager, 12, 13 years old. So as we came to Germany, so um, everything changed for us, for the entire family. I think the performing arts idea or direction was not anymore like the priority in the family in general at all, because of course someone from Vietnam came to Germany and would never think like, okay, performing art in general would be like a, a, future direction to do as a professional. But somehow I have a support from my teachers and stuff. So I stopped for a few years, I think 3 years, and then I start again to look out for interests in performing arts. And at that time, it was still like circus and juggling more specific. But then I discovered a very interesting new format that I never knew as I was a kid in Vietnam. This was like variety and cabaret theater. And then I joined the school for dance and artistic for circus art in Berlin. But then I decided already there before, as I entered to the school, that I don't want to continue to study as a traditional circus artist or circus juggler, because I think for me at that point already, that's the acrobatic or the skill you have, just the tools that you can be able to use this to tell some message or story, you know. And the idea of to have a concept of theatrical performances combined with all the element, music, dance, acrobatic, and of course myself, I was a juggler at that time also, already was kind of the vision and the dream I would like to work on it, you know, as a young boy in Berlin. And then of course it's very important that I was very lucky to be able to meet so many great and unique and international artists who was working at that time in Berlin, you know, from the very like underground cabaret into the very uh, high class classical variety theater and into, and I was looking and searching. I was more or less like a very curious person, and I think I'm still now today, you know, everything new and is undiscovered. That is where I really get my interest into this, because it's more or less until now, you know, whatever I have been create and in Vietnam for the last almost 10 years is I try to create a dream, something is not really existing in life, but that dream is about to share to the audience that okay, when they come into the theater, for example into the Saigon Opera House or Hanoi Opera House, or even when my show performing at the Sydney Opera House or in Oman or wherever the show is performing, you know, that when the lights come down, that my dream will begin, and that will guide the audience into a world that after the show that they would have a positive, you know, energy, and they would like, wow, this is something that maybe have the impact and would inspire the audience, you know, for them after they go out, and they would just not about talking about the show, but they would have like a positive feeling, you know, and something that maybe that could help them uh, for the next days of their life, you know, that this life could be very beautiful if we can create something, and that we can take care about something that would have a direct emotional connections, you know, between the art piece and the audiences. Yeah.
You just listening to you has almost put me into like a dreamlike trance. It's an inspirational to hear, because so I've been to the AO show. Thanks to you, you invited me. That we loved it, and then now you explaining that is making me kind of remember it, and then think about, yeah, like the lights go down and then you just become entranced with the performance on stage. And as someone who's not really a performer and not artistic at all, I never thought about what you said there. Really struck a chord about like using your skills to tell a story. So juggling on its own is like just a skill, right?
Right.
But then you can then put that together with your vision and with other skills and obviously then the art of the stage and the art of the production, and you can put all these things together and suddenly you tell a story. And at the end of the day, right, that's what all of life is human beings. We tell stories, whether it's to friends, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's a marketing tool. You know, we I don't want to be too deep, but we make meaning from life through the stories that we share. And so I think that's amazing to just, I'd never really thought about that, going from the skill of juggling to then putting together a dreamlike story on stage. That's really amazing.
Yeah, and I think even like with your professions, you know, so you are telling a very concrete story, you know, about something specific. But for me also is also doesn't matter if the audience would understand the story you want to tell, but the more important is that they have to feel it, you know, they have to feel like what is the purpose why you are telling that, and then this feeling is more for me more important than the understanding. And I think this is what is so beautiful when we work with performing arts, you know. And of course I think maybe that could happen to you, you know, you are a very well known stand-up comedian, you know, and I was lucky that you also invited me to your club, you know, the other night in Saigon at the Hard Rock Coffee. But I think yes, my English is okay, but I would I would imagine, you know, if my English would not be that okay, could still sense, you know, I could still feel like, okay, what is happening on the stage, you know, why these people, and even the reactions of the audience also could invited me into the environment that I may cannot understand 100% completely English. But of course, this is the magic, I would say, of live entertainment. What we are
Mm.
facing right now in a very difficult time, you know, we cannot have like a direct contact with our live entertainment and reaction with the live audiences, you know. Of course,
Mm.
with the video like live stream also something, but it's not. It's just like in live performances for me is always something very different and unique. And the unique of that moment, you know, sometimes you cannot even recreate it, you know. Even you do the same thing, you know, because the emotion of the performer, or how you feel on that night, you know, you tell about something. Of course, there is certain like key moment that people would laugh, you know, but the way you perform that every day, I think is would be very differently, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a couple of things I wanted to continue on. So when you're saying that, that's so amazing to hear that, you know, maybe if you can't understand the language, which I've been in that situation, that you can still feed off that energy and you understand that something good is happening. You understand, because it reminded me that communication, 90% is body language and tone of voice. So what you say is only 10%. And if you think about Mr. Bean, for example, he doesn't say anything, and it's one of the most well-known, funniest characters that's
Yeah.
been created without saying a single word. And I remember reading about how he created that character. Do you know what he did? He went to the Montreal Comedy Festival. He was already quite a well-known actor and performer, Rowan Atkinson at the time. But he went to the Montreal Comedy Festival where they mostly spoke French, didn't speak English, and he performed that character because that was his test. If they laughed at that character, he wasn't speaking, and that meant that to him was proof that he could do that. This character could be enjoyed by anyone in the world. It doesn't matter what language you speak, which has now obviously gone on to make him ridiculous amounts of money because they turned it into a cartoon, and now it's loved by Vietnamese children. I know that for sure. I'm not sure about around the world. But to continue on from what you said as well, about like different nights or little moments like that, for me is really really got me remembering about, sometimes when you're on stage, some of the funniest things I've ever said based on how hard people have laughed has been something that I've just thought of on the spot. And I've either never said it again, or maybe even I'm like, oh, that got a laugh, I'll use it again. And it never really seems to get as big a laugh maybe than when the first time I just said it without thinking. And then even what you're saying about, different performances, different nights. One of the things for me as a comedian is over the last year, I've realized that I have to give 110% every single time. And if I back off even a little bit, so I remember one time I was at the Hard Rock Cafe doing a gig, not the one that you were at, and I wasn't really happy with my performance. I thought it was like I was a little bit nervous maybe, it was a big crowd. But after that, I realized that like you can't be apprehensive, because even if it's not like really obvious, which I don't think it was, for me, it meant that I didn't feel my performance. So I'm doing the same kind of jokes, the same things, nothing new, but it could come across to the audience. And it brought it home last night. We did an online comedy show last night. And of course, Zoom technical difficulties, my camera wasn't working. So I did my performance with no camera. So obviously the audience could hear me. And I was doing jokes that I've done before, jokes I knew that worked, jokes that normally got big laughs. And it was almost silence the whole time. And then I realized, even though it's on Zoom, they couldn't see my face. They couldn't see me moving my hands like I'm doing right now. I use my hands a lot. They couldn't see my facial expressions. So that took away from 70% of the performance. 70% is body language, even on Zoom. And so that again made me realize, it's all about, that performance as well, right?
Yeah, I think like you say with Mr. Bean and also even like with Charlie Chaplin also, like when he create his silent movies, and people just crack it up when they saw it, and the only thing that really helped, with all the Chaplin movie is it was the music, and that music that would also support for the audience to have more emotional at the moment. And the technology at that time was not like right now, but I think even the ideas, it's just already incredible. And of course with comedy, I think like I don't know how you work, but I think in my shows, when I have all these comedy moments, it's really based on what I feel funny. It's not even that I think it's funny, but I have observed somewhere, and I also follow my performer, like, okay, what they think is funny, what is for them is funny also. And then for example, we have like I was in San Francisco with a German performers, at that point we was working in San Francisco, and there was a movie from a very famous Asian, I think from Hong Kong. It's called Kung Fu Hustle, and I thought it was funny, and I was cracking up, watching that a little bit. And then I gave this movie for my friend, Sabina, and she couldn't understand it. Why is this so funny? She said it's just like garbage, So I think it's like it's so interesting in terms of what we think funny, or what is comedy in terms of the region or where it is located, So yeah.
What is it? The thing with comedy that almost makes it even more difficult is it is very subjective. So what one person finds, the exact same performance can be judged completely differently. But I guess all art is the same. Music, everything can be. We're all unique, right? That's what makes us. It's what makes the world so much fun. Now I'm gonna go back a bit though. So, what year did you leave for Germany then?
1990.
1990. I think it's incredible. Your whole family are all in the performing arts. If you didn't become a performing artist, you would be the black sheep of the family.
I know, and I mean now I can say that, but as I told you, as we decided to move to Germany, my family was not like against like that I would continue with performing arts, but I don't think they they did not believe that if I would continue with performing arts, I would be successful at all. They already had the picture already. Like, okay, there's no chance. A young little Vietnamese kid in Germany and would be uh, um, recognized even first. Well, but I I I I follow my dream. I listen to my heart, and of course, I also have to research and study quite a lot. In terms of uh, also in terms of investment for myself. That is a it was a very nice journey, but it's also a very uh, tough and sometimes also very difficult moment I have been through. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I'm just thinking as well, with a family like that, you must have been one of the few people who weren't under the pressure to become an accountant or a doctor.
Exactly. I think there was something like, okay, you should study and be an engineer. Okay, like, okay, what kind of engineer? I still have a hard time nowadays just to school something or put a table together.
So you came back to Saigon, right? And you joined the circus in Saigon, is that right?
No, I came back. I was away for over 20 years. I We live majority in Germany. I would say I I grew up in Berlin, so in Germany. So even nowadays, all my works and all the inspirations, and of course for a teenager, that's is the time period that affects your life the most. Who you met, uh, in which environment you grow up, and I think even my work nowadays here in Vietnam, with all the, I would say, like a system and the concept that had a lot to do with the time I have been growing up in Berlin. Yeah, exactly.
So how did you end up in the Cirque du Soleil? Give me the story, the progression there from a boy in Berlin that learned to juggle. How did you end up? Uh,
Well, I started to perform in Berlin. I think it was I even can remember which year was that. I think about like end of the 90s. I think like 95, 96. I think 1996 that I start to perform in the cabarets and variety and I joined some it was not like a I joined some festival. It was a vaudeville festival in Berlin, and somehow I they decided that I won the newcomer prize for newcomer jugglers. That was in '96, I think, and then I was introduced to perform in different theater in Germany. There was and there's still a really big market for variety theater, which they call cabaret.
hmm.
And I perform at all the theater in Germany for at least like 10 years. And then and and then I was invited to actually to come to Montreal in years 1999 to perform at the gala of the TV gala of the Just for Love festival. Yeah, you know that festival?
No, I'm not aware of that one.
You don't know Just for Loves? Just for Laughs is one of the biggest comedy festival in Montreal, in Canada.
Oh, the one in Canada. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, I do know that one. Yeah.
They have like all these little comedy gags, on the airplane. Normally, when it's also from there, but it was like a theater gala, and someone like one of the producer came to Germany and saw me there, and of course they invited me to perform there, and on and on. So your name will be noted somewhere, by producers around Europe and around Northwest America, and of course I was performing the first time with Cirque du Soleil. It was in Monte Carlo, actually. There was a Formula One race, and Cirque du Soleil was putting the show together with another company. It's called Palm Duck and Circumstance from Germany. And we went to Monte Carlo, and we performing for this occasion. And all the workers, and I think Guy Laliberte, he was also there. I even don't know if he watched my act at all there. But then the rumor just keep talking. You just get into like a network of circus and variety performing arts in general. And it speak like around, like if you so and then at some point I got a phone call from Cirque du Soleil to join one of their projects. It was also like a vaudeville projects supposed to be performed in New York City, at the Beacon Theater. And then of course I say yes, because for any of the performer or circus artists, it's a honor to be invited, because normally you have to do some auditions, you have to go somewhere, you have to show your skill, but I did not have to do all these kind of things. So I joined their first production, and we're performing for almost like a year in New York City at the Beacon Theater, and then we went on tour in Toronto. We performed at the Chicago Theater in Chicago, which was like amazing because it's this like incredible historical theater. And of course, I was lucky just be like part of cast member who could performing daily, at the Chicago Theater. Yes, and on and on. And then, of course, beyond Cirque du Soleil, I perform at all the productions in Europe, France, and I even can remember everywhere, Sweden. So I have to write down all the places I have been. So when
what about Scotland?
No, not Scotland. I think Sweden is the most, or Denmark. It was like the farthest from North Europe that I have been to, but not Scotland at all. Yeah. I hope one day I could bring my show there. Yeah.
That would be. I'll tell you the next time I'm going on holiday there. You can just come with me, and we'll do a show just for my family in the front living room. I'm kidding.
I would love to. No, I would love to. I mean, nowadays it would be like so beautiful, and best thing, one of the best thing is like you are working on some projects or at some production, but you can travel, everywhere around the world. I'm so thankful with all the opportunity I have. I would not have been to, I don't know, to Bulgaria, if I didn't have a gig there, and by then I have met so many beautiful people, and people wherever they are, they are very unique, they have their own like character, they have on their mindset, they have their own culture, and that is very interesting for me also, yeah.
were there many other Vietnamese jugglers, Vietnamese performers? It's so incredible, you know, like obviously Vietnam, we don't need to go into it, but it's a massively affected by a massive war. And coming out of that, I wouldn't expect to. I'm even surprised, you know, you saying about your dad was a trumpet player, your mum was a ballerina. Like, it's me being a naive expat, but I just, because of, I guess, maybe pop culture of what people know of Vietnam, and now I live in the modern Vietnam. So we're not exposed to too much of this. And I have heard little bits about how Saigon used to have a thriving art scene, and part of the aftermath of the war was that was all lost. So is that, like, how did your parents fit into that?
Well, I think before the war, you know, everything was my parent was still kind of working still during the war, you know, because he was like a musician, so he went to play for clubs, you know, in play cool, I think in Saigon also, and of course the even during the war there was the televisions was still there in Saigon, and my mom, she was able to perform there. But I think I think the most very uh, hard and tough time is as the world ends, you know. So everything stopped, and everything need to be reorganized, you know, even in term of uh, art and artistic direction, you know.
So when did you come back to Vietnam? How long had you been away?
I've been over 22 years, and now is my it's already my I'm already 9 years here, almost 10 years. That's incredible, almost like a decade. I could.
And when you returned to Vietnam, how was your Vietnamese?
Very bad. Yeah, I tell you a story. I create like the first creation and production. It was more like a collaboration with the Vietnamese circus artists in Hanoi, and I was, I think, 23 years old at that time. That and we did like a project within like a few weeks, you know. And I have a really hard time to sometime, not all the time, but to express myself, you know, to the artist, like what I actually want. I see that way they could do, you know. And sometimes it's come into like a moment that the artist also struggle quite a lot, because they even didn't understand like what this man want to say, you know. It's like yeah. And then I didn't continue to work to get more perfection in my Vietnamese, but I decided to find a different way, you know, to have a discussion with them, you know. And so, and that works, you know, in terms of I explain, I do something, you know, and that they would understand. I think it's more about understanding. And of course the easiest one is when you exchange by words, you know. But the other way you can also like exchanges by your body language, you know, or even by your behaviors, you know, the way you tell, you know.
Well, we've beaten this horse to death on this podcast. We talk about all the time about how difficult Vietnamese is. But for anyone who doesn't or thinks that we're overplaying it, you've just heard that a person who was born in Vietnam and speaks Vietnamese still had difficulty after being out of the country, being understood by his fellow countrymen. That is how difficult Vietnamese can be. But I think also what you mean is the kind of cultural exchange as well, right? So you maybe, after being away for so long, had learned like a different way to talk to people. And from what I know in Vietnam, there's a very different way that we do that.
Right. And even nowadays, I still struggle sometimes with my written Vietnamese because the way how we write in Vietnamese is sometimes different than the way how we talk. You know,
Hmm.
yeah.
So you came back to Vietnam. How did you end up creating the À Ố show?
So I decided. I think it was my last contract. I had a very beautiful, nice contract on the cruise ship. Uh, they were starting from Miami, around all the islands, in Mexico, on and off. And then after 3 months, we crossed the ocean from uh, America to Europe, and then we continue to travel around all these islands in Europe, Spain and Barcelona, and I can remember all these islands. And for me, there was a moment. So the story is, I have a really, really great and good contract, with a lot of money, and I was living in a ship, in a cruise ship, in a 5-star cruise ship, that provide you everything you can have, you know you can eat all day, 24 hours, you have your bed, you never have to do your bed by yourself, and then you are on the water, yeah, most of the time. And I think I enjoyed that quite a lot, for the first weeks and months. And then suddenly I got scared. I got scared because I don't have any responsibility anymore in life, except performing, you know. And it's just like you go like one circle of the trip after 2 weeks, and you repeat this entire trip again.
Mm.
The only thing that changed is the customer, the guest, new guest. But I think for me is, at that moment, even for some people, maybe this is like a beautiful experiences, and it was for me too. But then after a while, I think like, wow, if it's like that, I don't know what I would have still ability if I get off the ship.
Yeah.
After 10 months, I even don't know like how I could wash my clothes, because everything, no, really, it's like
Yeah,
stress.
yeah. One of my good friends was a photographer on a cruise ship for a few years, and he told me all about that life. I've known other people to have done it, and it's, yeah, I think there's a shelf life for it. I remember I met one couple who'd been doing it for like 15 years, so I guess they just committed to it. They were married, and for them it was just life. But I think I would have maybe have loved to have done it when I was younger, for like a little bit. It seems like an incredible experience, but I can completely understand what you're saying. Like you couldn't. That's if your whole life is just revolved around eating and performing, sleeping, and not much else. Like it doesn't give you much stimulus or creativity as well.
Right. And I think I did it for like about 5 months, like halfway of my contract, and after we arrived to Europe, and also I think I'm a little bit scared being on the water for so long. I think it was like 12 days, 12 days of uh, on the ocean without landing anywhere. And some evening I remember I went to the top deck of the ship, and I was just afraid. you
Yeah.
know I was really like afraid, because this world, I would say, on the ship could be so beautiful if it's like your journey of a week or 10 days,
Mm.
but it's like on and off again, and then it's repeating again, and the space itself is become much too small, you know and
The
yeah.
rooms are tiny, aren't they? Like, did your room have a window?
Yeah, my room had a window, but it's still tight, you know, it's still small. You just go like that in your
Yeah.
bathroom, you know, and everything in your suitcase, you know. It's not your home, you know. You know, it's like a temporary living, I would
Mm.
say. That would, and then of course you have to do this all emergency exercise, you know, every 2 weeks. You know, you have to stand on the line, you know. And I think it was at some point like I say like, okay, if I continue with that, you know, maybe it's also not too bad. But then I have already before that plans, you know, what I would like to do when I come to Vietnam. And then I just talked to the manager of the show, you know, I would like to talk to the director. And then they organize, and I just talk to on the phone, you know. I say, man, I know, you know, how much you really love my work, and I know I really enjoy, but I say like I just can't stay in the ship anymore.
I'm sure it happens quite often. I'm sure they're used to people committing to stuff and then at a certain point just being like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah, and then and when it's become not comfortable for you anymore, especially when you are a performer, you know, you cannot hide it, you know. You cannot be like do your juggling as with joy, you know, even you can pretend to smile.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if your heart
You're
is not happy,
smiling on the outside, but you're dying on the inside.
right? Exactly. I think I was like I'm suffered so much because the life was much too good on the ship.
Mm.
No, I
That's what
would,
I've heard, you know, because it's a good life and it's an easy life, and
right.
apparently it's one of the few kind of routes for many comedians to make a living out of doing comedy is to get a gig as a comedian on a cruise ship. And so same thing, you know, and it's I think it's unlimited alcohol, right? Really, like, or do you pay for alcohol? I'm not sure, but it's not like a healthy lifestyle in terms of the readily abundance of alcohol. But one story I heard was, you know, as one of the worst gigs that this comedian ever had to do was the matinee gig. It was Lars Callio who was a guest on this show way back in the first season. He was like the third guest we ever interviewed, um, and still friends to this day. He just came and performed at one of our open mics, which was awesome
Mm,
on Zoom, obviously. But he was telling this story about how he had to do this matinee show like 3 in the afternoon, and there was just this 5-year-old just running up and down in front of the stage as he's trying to do his jokes. And obviously, it had to be clean comedy because it's the middle of the day. But so it wasn't like the material was inappropriate, but he was just trying to do his comedy routine with this 5-year-old running up and down. And so eventually, he kind of said to the mum or the dad that was sitting there, was like, you know, can you get your kid to sit down? And she's like, no, we're here to do the comedy. He can do what he wants. Just get on with it. And told him to just keep going.
right, right. Yeah, I know. Well, and then I talked to the company boss and director and explain, and he was still want to convince, you know. He say, okay, I let you get off the ship for a few weeks, but I hope you would return.
Hmm.
You know, I think it's one of the most nicest person and producer and director even, like. And then I say, yeah, but I can tell you now, if I leave the ship, I would never come back, you know. Well, I have to be honest with him, you know. I would just say, okay, I will, but it's that the moment when my heart tell me I have to tell the truth, you know.
Hmm.
So they have to rearrange the show. They have to hire a new performer that replace my place in the show. And then I remember I arrived in, but no, in Italy, I think, some port in Italy. And then I get a taxi. I went to the airport, and I bought right away the tickets that I can fly straight to Vietnam. So that was my coming to Vietnam, you know.
So you weren't already in Vietnam at that point?
No, I weren't. Yeah.
Wow. So where,
Yeah.
like, did you have family to stay with? Like, where did you land? Where did you go?
Yes, I have my relatives, you know. Yes, and then I had a distant relationship with beautiful dancers and my at that time girlfriend, you know. So I stay with my friends' house, my relatives, and then at my girlfriend's house at that time, you know. And and then it's just like, okay, just go there and restart really from zero, you know. I have just like ideas what I could do, you know, but not very specific plans, you know. So I ended up just like hang out for a few months, and then this and that come up, and then um, luckily I got the connections, you know, with the people in Saigon, you know, who have the interest to, because they already saw my previous production in Hanoi, and they have an interest to produce something similar like that for that particular um, uh, client's target, I would say, like audience, you know. So it was, and then yeah, we say let's do it. So and then since 2012 till now, so with the time, you know, that Loon production was created.
So nearly 10 years then of Lune production as well.
Yes, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
one of these things in Saigon, and I don't know if I'm the only one that's guilty of it, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. And the AO show was one of them. So we've been here, we're in our 6th year now. We've been planning to go for so long, and it
Mhm.
never happened. And then, I met you and found out about your involvement with it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finally go. So we finally went to it, and it was incredible. And do you know that night you gave me one of the biggest frights of my life?
Really?
Yeah, because if you remember, we our seats were kind of against the wall, I guess, and
Oh, right, right,
you know the building, I guess. And we're watching the show, and the next minute, a hand comes out of nowhere behind this curtain and like taps me on the
all right,
shoulder.
all right.
you're you're lucky I didn't soil the seats. I was like terrified, and then it turns around, and then there was your face just like out of the darkness, like hello.
Right.
But I
Wow.
would definitely recommend anyone listening, when things are back up, definitely go to the AO show at the Opera House. So tell me, what's next then for you in terms of lockdown at the moment, and then after lockdown, what's happening?
Well, during the lockdown, we still uh, kind of working in terms of come up with plans, with ideas, what happened. So we will still be able to perform few shows at the Opera House before the breakouts, and it was actually the continued plans for the next month, but then it's stopped right now because it's very crazy. And then we also have a plan to recreate one of our other another shows. It's called Teda. It's about the culture of the tribal and highlands culture on the mountain, because we already signed a contract with a theater in Saudi Arabian that the show needs to perform somewhere in February, I think, next year. And so it's expecting if um, the crisis, COVID crisis, is getting better, we will gather all the performers again to recreate the other show, and that they can be ready to perform in Vietnam by the end of the year. Is hopefully also at the Saigon Opera House, and then they are ready to go to the international stage in Saudi Arabia in February next year.
Awesome! It would be so amazing to see like the AO show or the new show Tadar. You said, was it?
Yes, yes.
to
Yeah.
see these shows then be taken around the world, and again bringing I feel like, you know, being in Vietnam now for so long, it's been incredible. The amount of friends that we've had visit us in Vietnam before the lockdown, obviously, kind of was like surprising to us, and Vietnam was really becoming on people's radar as a tourist destination. Obviously, tourism was going through the roof, but I also think conversely, Vietnam is becoming more exposed in a positive light around the world as well. So, like, we've had the latest guest on was like Sarah Nguyen in Brooklyn with her. She's bringing Vietnamese coffee to America. There's more and more exposure about the culture of Vietnam. Even like beer now, you go in the Premier League and you see like Saigon, beer Saigon, which is not a great advertisement for Vietnamese beer, but it's still an advertisement nonetheless. But you see, I think Vietnam is coming to the world as well as people coming to Vietnam. So it would be great to see that show representing Vietnam around the world.
Right, and this is also our target. Like if we have the ability and the chance, to performing anywhere in the world, and we would like to go. We already have also another contract already signed in Hungary with the À Ố show already for last year, and it has been always being postponed because. But I think Europe is coming back now with live performance again, and as soon we can get our vaccine passport, I hopefully sometime before next summer we can be able to travel again with our shows.
Brilliant. That'd be great. Hopefully that will all happen. So we're going to move on now to the final questions, because this is what I love. One of my favorite episodes are always when I could keep talking, but I try and keep it to not too long. Otherwise, I'll be doing like 3-hour Joe Rogan style podcasts, which I don't want to do. So I would love to talk to you more and find out a lot more, because I know there's more to your story than we've even be able to cover here. But we will move on at this point. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. So the first question that we ask everyone is, have you tried durian?
Yes.
And what do you think of it?
I mean, I can eat. I think what the people are very sensitive about durian is the smell. But for me, the smell is not that at all. I mean, like, I can eat it, or I don't have to eat it. It's not because it's not my favorite food, but in like the different way is like it's a very exotic fruit, right? You call it fruit, right? And it's a interesting food, I would say, but it's not like, oh, I have a durian, I'm crazy, I want to eat it right away. I mean, if in I have it on the table of my dining table with friends and family, and go ahead, who are so crazy, then they can have my portions.
This, just to remind everyone listening, this is a fruit that has cleared out buildings, because when they've smelled it, they think it's a bomb, and buildings have been closed down all because of a fruit.
Right, and even like they don't accept to bring it on the airplane.
Yeah, a fruit. It's crazy. So the next question is, what is the craziest car that you have seen? I mean, in Vietnam, but you can answer for anywhere on your travels. And the example that I give is that this year I saw a bedazzled Mercedes Benz where it was completely glittery silver.
Yeah, I think that there's 2 times I was have a no. There's the first time I was sitting in a Mercedes Benz car. I think it was like a C1. It was in Germany back in like I think 19 years ago, because we finished a show in Berlin, and my friend who just brought this fancy car, I would say, and we took off from Berlin to Hamburg, and he was driving like not less than 200 kilometers per hour, like constantly.
Wow.
And in Germany, if you get on a highway, it's your call, how fast you want to drive. And I have to say, I was a little bit concerned, but I mean, like, it was a really crazy drive. I had, it was the very first impressions about cars, because I'm not a crazy cars uh, person.
Yeah. We are
But
Vietnamese, so you're a crazy motorbike person, right?
yeah, and but lately I have another moment with a car. I don't think it's this a car itself, but it's like the uh, President VinFast car, like a very limited car. And I was in the car of my friend, who actually the chief of this entire project, and he was living in Mr. Hui. He grew up and he studied and he worked in Germany, and he connect all this company to be able to build the VinFast car. But the craziest for me is nowadays, we are 2021, I mean, like, even 10 years ago, nobody in Vietnam and in the world would expect, like, Vietnam would have its own car.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, interesting uh, idea, I would say.
Yeah. One of the things about Vietnam right now, living here and in general, is things happen so quickly. Like, and we've talked about it on this show before as well. Like, the development is so fast. And I've kind of forgotten that. You've just made a point. When we arrived here 5 years ago, VinFast didn't exist. I don't even think they had a factory, but it was like when the decision was made by, I guess, the Vin group, like, we're going to make our own cars. They brought over experts from Germany, as you mentioned. They created a factory, they created an assembly line, they created a company, and they manufacture. I think it was like the quickest opening of a car manufacturer ever. Is that right? It took them
I
only like
know,
2 years.
No, the feeling is like this was like overnight. It's
Yeah.
like suddenly it's just okay. There's a car from Vietnam, you know, which is so crazy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
kind of touching on that subject, then I guess. So my next question is, what is something that happens in Vietnam that would be looked at strangely in another country?
there would be the maybe you already observed this moment, but like when uh, friendships, when men and men would just like walk together and have the hand or the other person's shoulder. You
Yeah.
know, I think this is a very typical uh, reaction of a very normal relationship in Vietnam
Yeah.
when it's a childhood, and even they get older. They still like shoulder to shoulder, and I think to some uh, country which is a little bit more like how you say that they would look a little bit like uh,
Well, yeah,
I
when they
think
would assume that they were a couple, right? But it's here they're just
yeah.
friends, and it's the same. I remember I've seen Indian guys. When I lived in Australia, there was big kind of Indian population, a lot of students, and you'd often see like two Indian guys walking down the street holding hands. But
Mm.
they weren't a couple; they were just friends,
They are
So it's
friends,
just,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
totally normal. So
Yeah,
on the flip side, what's something that happens in another country that would look strange in Vietnam?
I have the memory. It was in uh, s- in in Hungary. So this is what happened
Yeah.
when you in Bulgaria, in Bulgaria, when they accept something, they would do this. Yes,
Really?
and, yes, and if they don't like something, they would do this.
Now, remember, not everyone's going to be watching this on YouTube and being able to see what you're doing right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
you need to explain it with words.
Oh, I mean like I have this experience, in Bulgaria when they like something, they would shake their heads like they don't like normally. That's the
Yeah.
moment. And the opposite also. If they don't like something, they just shake their head up and down like they really like, and it's an okay. And this is like this is like really crazy. I was there for like like I think like 2 weeks, and every time, and they saw my act, and sometimes I have a moment to look at the audience, and they just shake their heads. They say like, no, 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 no. It was like, I think it's like that's one of the moment I remember at this point. Yeah,
I'd never heard that one before. But
yeah,
that's similar to here in Vietnam. If you want to beckon someone to come here, you do this with your palm face down and you kind of wiggle your fingers to come here.
right, right.
Whereas, like in the UK, anyway, where I'm from, that would be quite rude to say to somebody, "Come
I
here."
know.
But here, so that's just these small things, all right. But you're like,
Right.
you grew up in a country, you just think the way that you're brought up is the only way that things are done. You don't realize that even maybe just the country next to you, it might be done completely differently. So,
Right.
final question: what advice would you give to somebody who is thinking or who's coming to Vietnam?
I think just open up your mind, open up your heart, discover. You will be, especially if you are a guest or a new guest, you are mostly will be very welcome by Vietnamese people because they are very like welcome and friendly to even guests, even like not directly that they know, and they are very supported, for people who visit and travel in Vietnam, and discover the landscape here, discover the country along the water. What I'm still doing nowadays, if I have the chance. There's so many places in Vietnam which are very beautiful that you should discover. Of course, the food. Yeah, that I would recommend anyone. And I did already few friends who come to Vietnam because of my recommendations, and they always keep saying like they would come back anytime again.
That's brilliant. So we'll finish up. Thank you so much, Tuấn. It's been so good to catch up. I will definitely will catch up in person when we can.
Yes.
When you're back in Saigon. I still need to get my swimming shorts from you. I left my swimming shorts in a hotel in Hoi An, and Tuấn picked them up for me, and I was meant to get them like a week later, and that was about 3 months ago. Now that was the last time I did a comedy show up there.
Yeah, I think your swimsuit, colorful swimsuit, is still here. So the people looking at me a little bit weird, like, what is this guy coming to get the colorful swimsuit from a?
They were pink. They were bright pink swim
That's
shorts. Yeah.
exactly. Wow.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. So before we finish, tell people listening and watching, where can they find more information about Lune Production, about the AO show, about your new show, Terdar? Tell everyone where they can find that information.
Yes, go to our website, luneproduction.com, or on social media. You can find everything, or even you can type like our show on Google, and there is a lot of information where we will playing next time, what will happen in the future with our touring performances in the country and also international touring.
Now, you've just embarrassed me because I've been calling it the AO show, which is really difficult to see. If anyone's watching, you can see the struggle, AO, like my neck muscles. But you've just embarrassed me because you pronounce it À Ố.
À Ố, yeah.
À Ố.
À Ố, yeah.
Oh, see, this is my I can't even see this how bad my Vietnamese is. I can't even say 2 letters correctly.
Yeah, but you still have time to work on it, right?
maybe. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on. This is the final episode of season 6. I'm so excited. We've just passed 18,000 downloads. I've lost track of how many guests we've interviewed. This started off as just a little hobby. It's become into something so much bigger. I've met some unbelievable people, interviewed some amazing guests. I'm so happy to have you on to finish season 6. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I hope you stay safe and take the time to write more news story and sketches that we will be able to share with the audience as soon as possible.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Tuấn.
Thank you, Neil. Okay. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Stories. So thank you so much again. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this. We'll be posting all of our podcast episodes here for now. Go on Facebook and Instagram, give them a like and follow us. And if you did enjoy this and you want to make sure that we can keep producing this content, please go to patreon.com/7millionbikes or coffee.com, ko-fi.com, and it's in the content, in the caption below. And you can buy me a coffee or a beer or become a member of 7 Million Bikes. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Leave your comments below. Cheers!